Money won't be tight if you have serious insight. Hello, my friend, and welcome to the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today, we have Mr. Brandon Bruce all the way from Tennessee. He's got a great story of how he and his co-founder out on the West Coast started Cirrus Insight. He's been there over 7 years. They started in 2011. And back in 2016, they were number 41 on the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies. They have a very cool plugin. I need to have these guys on the CRM Sushi podcast because their tool, this plugin, works with Gmail and Outlook, and it's for salespeople integrating with their tool, specifically Salesforce. But we don't really dive too much into that. We get into how he and his co-founder came up with the idea, how they leveraged it, how they took it from a freemium concept to a premium concept. So they went from, hey, give it away to get some leads for some other business to making it the business in and of itself, how they monetized it. So you are in for a treat. We talk about how you can feel kind of alone as an entrepreneur. And how there's pros and cons of having a partner. And so a lot of good stuff. But if you are alone, if you are an employee in sales like I was back in 2005, 2006, and still felt alone, then join the Make Every Sale community. I've been talking about this, and more, it's I'm getting clarity on where I want to take it, how I want to help you as a professional salesperson, entrepreneur, sales manager, how to help you grow your business. And I've always had live calls. Those that were in previous sessions of the Make Every Sale program and joined my inner circle know that I've always had weekly calls. And all the content, all of the pre-made videos, the audio files. I've always had that, but then I don't like big launches. Just a lot of work, coordination, expense, complexity, good grief. It's like, can we keep things simple? So stay tuned. But the Make Every Sale community, I'm going to be leading regular calls in that. It's following the same 7-week model with a couple of office hours, so open Q&A just to keep things going. But tune into that. Check it out. You've got a money-back guarantee. Come join us and jump right in. It's kind of like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They didn't stop everything and just show me. They showed me a little bit. They put me with one of the more experienced people and basically said, don't hurt Wes. We want him to keep coming back. And then every day I would do a little more and a little more and a little more. 16 and a half months later, got my blue belt and the bruises to prove it. But I wouldn't have it any other way. So jump in. Come get better. With the 41 videos and the workbook, you can work at your own pace. And then as you join in on the live calls, you'll either get a taste of what's to come, or as you progress, you can begin to help the new people. But either way, learning from others, getting their perspective, and then turning around and teaching someone else really helps you get better faster. You're going to hear it from me. You're going to hear it from a more experienced person, at least experienced on my training, and you're going to teach it to someone else. That's how you become a professional salesperson. That's how you explode your business, your idea. That's how you launch that dream and make every sale. So come join us, makeeverysale.com. You'll be glad you did. Now let's bring on our guest. Brandon Bruce, you've done it the right way, man. You went from California to the South. I moved from the South to California. I don't know what I was thinking, but maybe you can talk some sense into me, man. Welcome to the Sales Podcast.
It's great to be here. It's great to join you from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Woohoo! All right, we were talking a little SEC football. It's just 2 in a row. I've been talking some sports beforehand, but
Okay.
We'll just have to sprinkle it in. This is not yet the SEC football podcast, but I might have to make one of those. So, man, you started what? Cirrus Insight? Is that correct?
Cirrus Insight, alternately pronounced sometimes as Serious Insight. So we have to get super serious about it. Or last year we got referred to as Citrus Insight. That'd be more of a Florida company. Or my favorite one is Circus Insight, providing analytics to the circus industry. But now we're serious like the high wispy clouds because we're a cloud software company.
Hey, I was a meteorologist in the Air Force, man. I know what Cirrus is. So, that and 50 cents. Well, that and $3.50. Well, actually, I don't even need any money now, but I can use a Starbucks restroom. But anyway, I digress. You get me off on all these
now. You couldn't a few weeks ago. You can't
That and $3.50 will give me a cup of coffee, and I can use the restroom. How about that?
Not bad.
So we'll get into your software because it is kind of cool. I was looking it up on how it's a plug-in, right? Gmail, Outlook, Salesforce, all these kind of cool things. So we're going to sprinkle that in. But I'm more interested on how the heck you built this. You're number one on the Inc. 500, 12 million annual revenue, 150,000 customers, and you're doing this from Knoxville, Tennessee. What the heck, man? How did you grow this company?
Why not, right? No better place to do it than in Knoxville or in the South. So, yeah, my co-founder, Ryan Huff, and I, who go back all the way to UC Santa Barbara, we went to undergrad together 18 years ago, and we were good friends, built some websites together, always wanted to do a tech startup, but never quite had the right idea for one until fast forward 7 years ago. Ryan said, hey, there's a gap in the market, which is kind of what you're always looking for as an entrepreneur. And he said, Salesforce is growing super fast, and he'd become an expert in that platform. And then meanwhile, Gmail was starting to take off, not just with individual users, right? Because I'd had a Gmail account since forever, getting an invite from a friend of a friend of a friend, but it was starting to take off with businesses. And he said, there's a gap here. You should be able to work from Gmail where all your customers are emailing you, and you should be able to see their information from Salesforce. You shouldn't have to jump between two browser windows all day, which as a high volume salesperson, you might have to do 200-300 times a day, burning up hours at a time. So he said, what if we just bring Salesforce into the inbox and you can just work from one screen all the time, see all your customer information, update it. It's going to save the salesperson time. And meanwhile, the managers are going to be happy because there's actually going to be decent data flowing into the CRM, which is always the big challenge, right? Companies spend all this money on a CRM and it turns out nobody wants to use it because we'd all rather talk to each other and make sales. So that was why we launched 7 years ago. And it's been a good run since then, because a lot of companies are using both platforms. A lot of companies now are on Gmail, a lot in Salesforce. And so we were kind of that missing link in the middle.
So two things come to mind here. One is, having an idea and actually monetizing it is tough, and doing it with a partner and remaining friends and partners is tough. So what is your secret?
That's true. And we've seen, I think oftentimes if you're a solo founder, there's the struggle of just kind of having to make all the decisions and deal with the doubt and kind of the loneliness on your own. So I think there's a benefit to having more than one on the founding team. I think the two of us have been able to balance each other pretty well. That said, we've also seen some founding teams break up, right? So we're like a band breaking up. People get tired of spending time together and it's time to move on. The benefit of our partnership, I think, is rooted in the fact that we've been friends for so long. So, 18 years is like half of our lives we've been friends. So if I mess something up, Ryan can just call me and say, that thing you did sucks, right? You suck. You need to fix it. And I'll be like, okay. He doesn't mean it personally. He doesn't mean he wants me to leave the company or go away or I'm a terrible person. He just means fix it for the better of the company. Let's move on. Let's move along. So we can provide each other with that kind of unvarnished feedback. And I think that's helpful in a startup environment because you have to move so fast. It can't be like, well, I'll get around to breaking this to Brandon in a few months. I don't want to feel bad today. It's like, it's much better just to get it out in the open and tell somebody, hey, we got to move on and fix this. So, the hope is that through the partnership, kind of like people have described a marriage, is like, hopefully the bad times are half as bad and the good times are twice as good. It's a magnifying effect. So that's been a good part about doing it. And I think as far as, geographic location, Ryan's in Irvine, California. So our dev team is out there, which has been great. And meanwhile, I'm located out here. My wife's a professor in Tennessee. And so we just started the team here and we found a tremendous amount of talent. And frankly, we've been able to scale faster earlier than we would have been able to if we had been on the coast in Silicon Valley or New York or in kind of hotbed technology cities like Austin or Chicago or Boston, because the costs are so much higher.
Right. So, all right. So you've developed, and that's fine, but you didn't answer the question, man. How did you successfully scale? Because again, ideas are a dime a dozen. there were probably 100 people sitting around saying, man, I sure wish Gmail worked better with Salesforce.
We heard from some of those actually after we launched, and they were like, we were thinking about doing that. And I was like, we thought about it too. And we launched. They're like, we still might do it. And I said, you should. Like it's harder than it looks. And I was largely speaking on Ryan's behalf because he's the architect. But even from a business side, to your question, it is hard to scale. And I think what helped us the most was very early on reaching out to everybody that posted online saying, hey, I've got this pain point, trying to put emails into Salesforce, trying to see customer data, but not have to log into Salesforce all day, or I find the interface cumbersome. And I reached out by email, by phone, and tried to talk with every single one that I could think of and invite them to put their email address in on our one-page ugly website that just said, when we're ready with a browser extension, I'm willing to try it and provide feedback. And we had like 1,000 people say, yeah, raise their hands and say, I want to try it. We'll provide feedback. And it was based on that feedback that we got to the point where we decided, I think this can be more than kind of a free software utility that floats around the internet that saves people a little bit of time, but instead could be a paid piece of software that we could scale a company on, because the feedback was Salesforce really expensive. This is saving us a lot of time. People aren't using Salesforce without this piece of software. So, it's kind of becoming mission critical for our team to have this piece of software. And when we started hearing that language, we realized, hey, we're onto something. We can charge money for this. As those companies grow, we'll grow with them, and hopefully the word will spread. So at that point, once we had those kind of initial 500 paying customers or so, then we were able to start going out and building a team on our side. We had the initial cash flow, and that's what kind of started the engine for scaling.
So what was the first thing that you did, right? You and Ryan are hanging out, and, hey, man, well, I guess you're in California. So, like, hey, bro. So, like, dude, I'm, like, totally, like, bumming on this, like, interface. And so y'all agree. There's something there. But you said Ryan's the engineer. Are you the sales and marketing guy?
Yep, exactly. That's kind of the split, product and sales. No,
but you were both already just doing your own things, right? I mean, you graduated, you're in corporate America. What are you doing?
Yeah, he had by that time started his own consulting firm, building Salesforce software for other companies.
Oh, okay.
That wanted to have a product of his own. Sure. And I was working in fundraising, so the sales equivalent in the nonprofit world, but feeling kind of the pain of a rough CRM.
Okay, so Ryan's in this world a bit, and I'm going to assume you were maybe an end user of Salesforce.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so y'all knew this, so it's not like you're both using Salesforce.
So that initial conversation, it was kind of a divide and conquer. So Ryan really had all he can eat with developing the app itself, and it was like, hey, I could build websites. He's like, hey, can you help by putting together this website? I'm going to enter the extension into for recognition at the next Dreamforce conference, Salesforce's big conference. So I said, sure, I'll put up the website for it. And meanwhile, I started searching around to say, hey, does this idea have legs? And that led me to find some of the people that were posting about it, which these were power users, right? I mean, who actually posts about their needs and wants online? Like, gosh, I really have a pain point in my sales process. Not that many people, unless they're pretty serious about their craft. So these were Salesforce partners, consultants, sales directors, people that really cared about workflow. And so I started just emailing them and saying, hey, I want to call you. So when I was out, making fundraising calls, driving 5-6 hours, right, down to visit alums in Florida, because I was doing fundraising for school where my wife's a professor, then I would just make calls on the road and find out, so what do you want from an application that connects Gmail and Salesforce? If you could have anything in the world, right? Wave the magic wand. And then, I want to do this, that, and the other. Well, what if we started with just these couple things? Yeah, I'd be willing to try that. Okay, cool. And meet them halfway. So it was just a lot of early, I think what would be called business development, forging those relationships with people willing to, reach a hand out and provide some early feedback.
So was Ryan just doing this, just peeling off some of his team, just having them code on the side? And then, because he's got his main job, you've got your main job. So basically call it a side hustle for some amount of time.
It was really a side project for him personally. And then he could do, all of the Salesforce architecture side, because he really became an expert in that. for the front end, then we hired some folks. So that was hey, friends and family, we have this idea. We think it could work out. Would you be willing to loan some money in so that we can finish the development of this thing? Here's how it's going to work. Okay, so they did, right? And that's off talking with other entrepreneurs. That's often how it starts. I mean, the first money in is typically not the big, VC institutional money. We're going to take a big risk on you, especially for unproven entrepreneurs like us, first time go. It's your parents and your other relatives and your close friends that are basically like, I have no idea what you're doing, but I believe in you as a person. I think you're going to work hard. And so, yes, we'll invest in you. And thankfully, we were able to repay that money within 4 or 5 months because we started selling right away. As soon as the software hit market, we started to get people wanting to buy it. I'm like, well, this is a good sign. So we paid that money back. And then a few months after that, I left my job, and that prompted Ryan to leave his job. And at that point, we were all in.
How did you know how to price your software?
Oh, I think it's largely for most of us a guessing game. I mean, I read the research on here are the things to consider and here's how to do the studies. But for us, certainly, and I think for most of the founders I've talked with, is you don't have time to run those studies and you have the budget to do it anyway. So for us, it was looking around at what are other integration apps on the market that connect different pieces of software. How complicated do they look? What's their architecture? How do they scale? What could we reasonably charge as a percentage of what these companies are paying for their cloud software that they could say, yeah, all right, this saves us enough time and boosts our adoption and use of Salesforce enough that this is very easy decision to make, that we can pull the trigger on this. So we priced it originally for our beta users. We said, if you order within the next 30 or 60 days, then you can lock in $5 user a month for life, right? Lifetime cost. We'll keep you at that forever, as long as you stick with us. Now, we may add other versions of the software later, and you can upgrade those if you want, but you'll always have this core for that amount. But it's going to expire. If you don't buy before then, it's going to be $9 a month. And then it stayed $9 for the next 2 years. And then as other entrants came into the space and as other apps continued to increase their pricing, we jumped it up from 9 to 19. And that was a big kind of heady decision where it's like, really, we're going to more than double our price. That was a good one. I'm glad we did that. So we grandfathered everybody in. We didn't jack anybody's price up to make them upset. But we moved it from 9 to 19, and our conversion rate stayed identical. So, for those that are math inclined, we doubled our revenue overnight for new customers by changing the price. So I think our price was right when we started, or close to right, but it was good that we changed it later to capture the value that people were attributing to the app.
Right. So when you launched, it's you and Ryan, and I guess a couple of Ryan's developers from his consulting company?
Yeah, actually, most of the folks that he was working with were Salesforce experts. We needed some folks that were experts on the front end that could make things work really well inside the context of a browser extension. So it was actually outside consultants and developers that we hired that knew exactly how to do that. So they wrote the front end, and we could hook into it with the Salesforce side that Ryan had built. And then once we got live and then Ryan learned a lot of the front end, then we were able to essentially keep building it internally.
So who did you bring on first? Once Ryan quits or converts, you quit your job, who's the first person you hire?
So we did 4 hires. It was our first 4 hires, and it was right before the first Dreamforce we went to. So we're like, we're going to go to a conference that's got, at that time, I don't know, 25,000 people showing up, more than that maybe, in San Francisco. It'd be nice to have a little bit of beef so that we're not just standing at the booth ourselves. We need more of a team to go to market with. And so we hired 2 salespeople, a head of marketing, and someone to handle customer support. So all the hires, interestingly, were on the go-to-market side of the house. Ryan was still flying solo on the dev side. And that was a function in part because he had so much kind of internal Salesforce knowledge. Is like, who do we find that's the best complement to that? And in part, it was a function of it's so hard to hire engineers. There's such a scarcity. There's a scarcity then, and there's even more of a scarcity now. So 7 years later, we've had 7 years to train and educate more and more engineers, and there's even more scarcity than there was before. So anytime I talk with elementary and middle school kids about coding and stuff, I always, if you like this, if you think this is fun, if you enjoy it, you got a great job for life. That's not going to go away anytime soon. It's a pretty good field to be in.
Right. So you brought on a couple sales, marketing, customer support. So how did you ramp up sales? I mean, how did you know these were good people? How did you grow the sales side of things? So I always tell business owners, your number one job is to market your business, and sales and marketing are two sides of the same coin. And people. Yeah.
Our initial sales hires both were based on, referrals, recommendations. When I had said, hey, we're looking to hire. And so one came as a direct referral from my wife's higher ed institution, Maribel College, and another was a referral from University of Tennessee. So we had two relatively recent graduates come join us, both hungry, ready to work hard, ready to work a lot of hours, which is really what we needed. Both that had technical acuity. They got up to speed with the software very quickly. And then it was a matter of trying to figure out, workflow, like how many people are just going to try the software and buy without talking to anybody? How many are going to need to see a demo? How many are going to need to go through some sort of sales process? And if so, what does that process look like? So it was a lot of just sitting next to each other on a desk, like shoulder to shoulder, listening to each other's demos and trying to figure out what resonated with customers and what didn't. I think one of the breakthroughs that we had was when we transitioned from the first version of Cirrus Insight to the second. And before we transitioned, we got an email out. We had acquired some emails from meeting people at Dreamforce and other conferences and other sources and said, okay, let's send an email out and say, if you want to preview a version 2 of the software, we'd be happy to you. And then we put a link in the email and said, go ahead and schedule a time with us directly on our calendar. And we sent that email out. And then Daniel, our first hire as a salesperson, came in the office and was like, hey, just so you know, I'm fully booked next week. And that was 4 hours after we sent the email. So in 4 hours, he had booked 40 hours of meetings. And we thought, that's very interesting. We've never been able to do that before. That works. So we've been doing that ever since, just making ourselves very easy to meet with, which sounds like one of these really obvious, simple things. And yet, for so many companies we all know, it's just hard to get in touch, even when we as a customer want to. So we made it very easy. You just say, if you want to meet with our sales team or our customer success team, or you have a question, just grab time on our calendar and we'll show up, and you'll show up and we'll have a conversation. And,
but how do you screen tire kickers? I mean, I've gone from, 1 hour meetings to 50-minute meetings. I go from 30-minute meetings to 25-minute meetings. Now I have a 15-minute link.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are getting educated on my website and whatnot, I don't need to speak to you for an hour to just ponder things, So how do you stay efficient?
Yeah, I think that's been something that we've continued to try to get better at over time. But certainly if you to the original question, like how did we start and how do we start to scale? We didn't do any filtering whatsoever. If you want to talk to us, it doesn't matter how far afield it was. Just, I have a question about Salesforce. Okay. We're happy to sit and talk with you for half an hour because we have, more time than we have direction. Like we were relying on people to provide us with direction and insight and little leads to other companies they've worked with and so on and so forth. And so we basically said, hey, we're willing to talk with anybody, anywhere, at any time, if you're willing to spend time with us. Thankfully, most people, and to your example, there's certainly tire kickers around there. There's certainly folks that are just lonely. They just want to have a conversation with somebody. But most people will self-select out, which is say, most of us as customers don't want to talk to anybody. We'd prefer not to, but we don't want to waste time. And so if someone's actually willing to show up on their time, it's probably going to be worth our while. Certainly more than 50%. I would say more than 2/3 of the time, there's a likelihood that they actually want to have a conversation and may eventually buy something. So we've continued to operate basically on that math, is to say, some are going to be time wasters, but the majority don't want to waste their own time. People are, call it being selfish. We'll just call it, being in your own best interest. People don't want to schedule meetings just to chit chat.
So if it's a little bit larger company, more than like a solo guy, let's say there's an opportunity for 10 or 20 seats.
Yeah.
Who is scheduling that appointment? Is the VP of sales scheduling that? Is the business owner scheduling that? Is it a marketing person?
frequent for us, job titles that we love to see are sales leadership. So VP of sales, sales manager, sales director, but also some of the relatively newer job titles. So we're talking about director of sales operations, director of sales enablement, director of sales effectiveness. Those three are really good ones. The latter two especially, I think, are relatively new at most companies over the last decade or so. We also like anything related to Salesforce because our software is so deeply integrated, whereas a lot of software companies don't like to sell to IT because it gets into the weeds and there's a lot of questions. We like that. So a great combo would be director of sales effectiveness and the Salesforce administrator both on the call. Because we like to talk with the administrator about, hey, you know, all that workflow that you've written, custom objects, record types, dependent pick lists, we've got you covered. It all works automatically with Cirrus Insight. That's how we built it. And that's what they care about the most because they spent the last year building all that stuff. And to have some other software come in and say, yeah, it's not quite going to work that way, could be upsetting because it's not going to align with their sales playbook. It's not going to align with their operational workflow. So having a technical person on is great when we can get them. Otherwise, a sales leader, kind of the business decision maker. And then eventually, especially if it's more than that 10, 20 seats, you have a 50, 100, or thousands of seats, then you're invariably going to be doing a security review. So you're going to have a SecOps team that's going to vet the application, especially now in light of risk mitigation, GDPR, everything else. You're probably going to talk with procurement, which I fondly refer to as the anti-sales. And then you're going to talk with legal. Right, everything's got to go through legal and get approved and get signed off by somebody probably even higher up the food chain, somebody at C-level, CIO, CTO, CEO is going to sign off and say, okay, to spend that money.
Right.
So yeah, if it's a big company and longer sales cycle, usually those 5 kind of core decision makers that we have to get over the line.
So let's say you've got this $1,000 seat opportunity. Where do those originate? Is it a lower level salesperson stumbles across it and, hey, boss, this is kind of cool? Is it the VP of sales or the president of sales or the president of North America that runs across this? You know, what's the origin of a typical large enterprise sale like that?
It's a great question, and we found it in our case both directions. So sometimes it trickles up, which is a sales team finds it, man, this is great. It's saving me a ton of time. I'm boosted up to the manager and they boost up to the director, et cetera. And so it goes from quote unquote bottom up the org chart. Frequently though, it's also during sort of a change management process. Hey, we're going to implement Salesforce. We're going to switch from Google to Microsoft or Microsoft to Google. So we're looking for new software that's going to make all this stuff work together. And then, okay, my job is to go find that stuff that works well together. And that might be the sales leader. It also could be someone in the CIO's office or CTO's office that's just out there shopping, trying to find the right stack, if you will, to assemble together. And in that case, it's kind of top down because maybe even the line salespeople aren't even allowed to install software, right? It could be a secure environment. So they can't trickle out in those organizations. We have to do pilots and we got to do user acceptance testing and go through kind of a rigorous software approval process in order to be vetted and then approved at the end. So we've seen both, and those stories are pretty fascinating. I would say if I was choosing a typical example, then the big enterprise deals come from more than one place at a time. So it'll be sales development has reached out on our behalf into that organization, maybe over time. Meanwhile, one of our consulting partners refers us into that same org. Meanwhile, some sales rep installs our software just to get a lead up on their team or on their peers. And so it's like all 3 or 4 or 5 things happen at the same time, and that's what gets us in. So the tricky part about that is classic problem to marketing, which is attribution. What was the most important thing we did? Was it that we showed up at the conference and had visibility in front of the manager? Is it that we made our software really easy to install for end users? Or is it because we ran that ad that got in front of the CIO in that magazine? It was a little bit of all of them, probably.
Right.
So it's one of those 50% of marketing works. We just don't know which half.
So what advertising, since you mentioned that, I mean, what are you saying that's working? Is good old traditional print advertising working? Are you doing online? Are you LinkedIn advertising? I mean, what works today?
Most of the stuff that's working for us today, I would argue is non-advertising, right? So while we run some campaigns through some of the social networks, the LinkedIn, especially Facebook, some with Twitter, and we do run some AdWords. We run retargeting campaigns, especially in the past, right? Which is just one of those things that kind of logically makes sense. If someone actually takes the trouble to visit you on the website, they've evidenced at least some tacit interest in what you do, or at least read something on your blog or whatever, then to make yourself available to them as that person goes around the internet, it kind of makes sense, kind of a good idea. You give them a chance to say, oh yeah, that, good reminder. I'll go back and visit that thing again. Because most of us don't go to a site and just, hit the shopping cart on the first go. You put something in the shopping cart, I'll think about it for a little bit, whether it's a $5 purchase or a $5,000 purchase. Is pretty rare just to say, sure, here's the card, go ahead and charge it. So it's nice to remind people. But most of our outreach is, more direct on LinkedIn, just personal messaging, introducing ourselves. Here's what we do. Obviously emails to say, hey, and especially for us, we're an inbox installed application. So the best possible place for us to introduce ourselves is to somebody inside Gmail or inside Outlook and say, hey, you're here already. Wouldn't it be nice if Salesforce was already here with you in the side so you could do all your work from one place? Click this link, you can install without really leaving, and it'll all work out. That's a good place for us to have that conversation. And then we've done some, outreach, obviously, by phone, sometimes by mail, but very little print in our case, because we're software. They've got to install it. So to go from print, back to the web, we might as well just stick to the web.
Yeah. Are your people reaching out? Do you have like a division of accounts? Because, closing a 10-seat deal, $190 a month, can probably close in 2 calls in 1 week. But a 1,000-seat call could take 3 to 6 months. So do you have like large account sales reps versus small account reps, or how do you do that?
We do. We have tiered it out so that certain reps will be by default assigned to some of the larger opportunities. And that it typically is based on the experience, right? If they're here with us longer and had a chance to sell into progressively larger organizations, there's a knowledge of the process, but also just a comfort level in knowing, okay, I'm here in this deal and I need to get to there. Here's what that looks like in the meantime. And often in those cases, because we're still a small company, strength in numbers. So we've learned over time, just because I'm the assigned sales rep in this large enterprise deal doesn't mean I take it from 0 to hero at the end and surprise everybody. Hey, I closed this deal single-handedly. That's fun to do, but it's really, really hard. And it's often easier to close if I bring a bunch of my peers with me onto the call, because the enterprise is going to bring 5-10 people onto the call, right? They're going to bring all their big guns and have all sorts of questions. And so meeting them at least part way by having 3 or 4 people join the call from our side, right? All join the call. I'll have Ryan, our CEO, join the call, especially with technical questions. We'll have our director of customer success join and say, hey, as soon as you've signed up, my whole team is going to be here. We've got 15 Salesforce certified administrators that will work closely with your team to make sure this is totally wired and your team gets onboarded immediately. It's going to be an awesome first year and every year henceforth. That gives the customer quite a bit of confidence. The other thing that's worked well for the enterprise, which, kind of goes back to your question about print, but is even more old school, is just meeting in person. Most of our calls are done this way through Zoom. Some video calls can be great because at least that way you establish a little bit more personal rapport than you do just with a screen share where you're pretty positive the other person's also multitasking on their phone. At least you have some eye contact. But for any opportunity where it's possible and where the customer will agree, we'll hop on a plane and go visit the headquarters and really understand how they work and get in a conference room and hash through all the questions. It goes a lot faster that way. And I think I'm pretty confident that we've won a lot of deals by being able and willing to do that versus other companies that don't bring it up. That's a differentiator. If someone called us trying to sell us something and said, hey, tell you what, we're going to come visit you in the office in Knoxville and see how you work, I'd be like, okay, this is serious. If I accept that, that means I'm truly interested in what they have to offer. Because otherwise, I can be like, actually, I don't want you to come and interrupt our workday. in Knoxville. We're good as we are. So if I accept, that means I'm a good portion of the way down the buy cycle.
Damn, then I got to put shoes and pants on, man. Can't be having that.
That's right. They got to hop in a plane. They got to make more than one hop in order to get here to Knoxville, probably, unless they're coming from Charlotte or Atlanta or Chicago or Dallas. They're going to have to hop more than once. So it's a commitment.
Yep. So so your team sent me some questions, and one that was really interesting here, talking about the art of the slow sale. I always teach that time kills deals.
Yeah.
But are you saying sometimes it's better to go slow?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, and the example that I give in that book was early on in the company, right? Very fast twitch and almost to the point of paranoia. Like if I'm not working, then something's going to go wrong because there's no one else to back me up. There's no one else working on the deals. And so it was our first opportunity, I think, to take, my wife and I took like a long weekend with our young family. And it was like, I'm not going to be connected to the internet that entire time. That started to freak me out because I had like 3 significant deals that were going to move the needle and help us scale the company. And all of them were out essentially for signature. I felt like we had gotten to terms, but none of them had written back yet. And it had been a little time, right? It's been 3, 4, 5 days and I haven't heard back. And so I'm used to, hey, how's it going? Is there anything else I can do? Or you feel good about this? You ready to move forward? In order for us to hit the launch date, we're going to need your signature soon, that sort of follow-up. And so I wasn't able to do that. And that totally freaked me out, not being able to follow up as often as I wanted to. But thankfully, came back from a long weekend, felt a little bit more rested, but still nervous about those deals. And all 3 eventually came back to us, and we signed all 3 customers. Now, that's N of 3, right? Could be just luck of the draw. But the lesson to me was, A, don't overburden the customer with just constant barrage of follow-up. And B, when you've done your work, when you've followed your evolving playbook, then stick with it. You don't have to just go crazy about the whole thing. You can slow down and let the customer make their decision. That was bolstered then years later when we had a team come in and run a bunch of analytics on our Salesforce data. And what we found was when someone started a trial, there was a barrage of questions, lots of email communication, then just sort of a moderate level through the middle of the trial, bunch of questions at the end. Then there was total quiet for 10 days, 0 communication in either direction, except unless we were like following up like, hey, are you still there? Are you still there? But 0 communication back from the customer for 10 days, then they would sign. And then I started to realize, well, that's not that weird. I do the exact same thing. I get right ready to sign the contract, and then actually I'm going to wait and see if I really need this product. Let me really think if this is the best thing. Let me look around and make sure there's no good, viable alternatives. And so, unless there's an emergency, like I got to put gas in the car to get and go and do a trip, most products you can afford to wait. And so everyone else was just being like most of us are. They were giving it a week and a half, and then they would pull the trigger. So it was kind of a lesson to our whole team. Don't freak out during that quiet period. It's normal. Let the customer come back to us.
Well, yes.
Now the problem is,
it is nerve-wracking, huh?
Yeah, once you get past those 10 days, then you get into that time kills deal situation where it's like, okay, now we need to like pull out all the stops and hop on a plane or get on the phone, get in touch with everybody. And so it's a happy medium, right? You don't know during that time if it's, I'm just being a good patient salesperson, or I'm watching the deal die before my very eyes. The time is killing it. But it turns out most of the time it didn't make a difference whether we just hammered on a customer or not. They were going to take their time. They were going to do it or they weren't. And so there's no reason to barrage them and possibly upset them with the follow-up. One thing, though, that I'll add as part of that has helped, when all other means of communication have failed with prospects or even with customers, text message has tended to work. So, and I learned that through a talk that somebody gave that just said, hey, when we're in a pipeline and the person says, I've done everything I can in this stage and we're waiting on the customer to the next stage. And he's like, well, we don't really just want to wait for the customer to get from, proposal to feedback on proposal, do something. And he said, well, that's something that you can do. One of the things is just call or email and say, hey, can I get your cell phone number? And if they don't provide it for you, the deal is probably not heading the right direction. If they do give it to you, now you've got a means of communication. And they can text you, you can text them. And so times that we've been totally unable, like the customer just ghosted, they're gone off the face of the earth, having a mobile number that we could text got us the answer back. They'll usually text back like, oh, it's no problem, I've just been on vacation. Like, oh, you just didn't tell us for 2 months. And it's like, of course, because they're in Europe. So they took all of August off. They just hadn't let us know, and we hadn't factored that in. So it helps us to relax a little bit just to be able to get in touch during those quiet times.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. All right. Final question, man. You ready?
Let's do it. Are the Vols going to have a huge football season this year? Why not? Right?
Yeah. I'm
going to bounce back. We have to. You can only go up.
I'm going to tell my team, yeah, go ahead at this point. Go ahead and cut that part out. Yeah, okay. Back to the podcast. Go Tigers. So, final question, man. Our listeners, they're on a plane. They're actually flying out to go see somebody, but they're on a tight budget, so they didn't get Wi-Fi. But they're listening to this podcast. So as soon as they land, as soon as they get off the treadmill, as soon as they stop driving, what should they do as a result of listening to this to move the needle, to grow the sales, to grow the company, to grow them, anything? What should they do?
Well, shoot. I mean, plug of ourselves. We got a great team here that knows sales well that's happy to talk with you because, like I said, we'll schedule meetings with pretty much anybody. So certainly if you use Salesforce and Gmail and Outlook and all that stuff, hopefully our product can be useful to you. But even regardless of that, we've got a team now of 60 folks that are pretty knowledgeable on sales workflow and how to configure things and playbooks that are happy to talk with you. Plus, if they happen to be on a plane to Knoxville, then they're welcome to stop by the office and we'll take them down the street to Gus's and get some fried chicken and barbecue.
Now we're talking. All right.
Maybe we'll even take them to a football game during the season. They should probably fly out during the fall. That would be the best time. See the leaves change, go see a game. But yeah, those are a couple things. I think otherwise it is a matter, everyone's so busy now and there's so much communication just flying around that, finding a few tools that can help you focus on just talking with people. That's the best thing that we found is talking. Having live communications is number one. Having these type of Zoom calls, second best. Third best is just a phone conversation. Fourth best is kind of a long email trail just because it takes so much longer.
Right.
But as talk, it's the only way that we found to do business for ourselves. It's the best way we found to do business when we're the buyer. If the vendor's willing to talk with us and spend face time understanding what we want, that usually ends well for them and we get a good product that we want. So if people are on the plane and they've been without Wi-Fi and disconnected from the world, hopefully they had a good conversation with their seatmate. But when they get off, it's probably time to get in touch with their prospects and have some conversations, and that goes well. We can all kind of work around the periphery of a sale. Really, the only way to get one is to get a yes from a person on the other end, so you have to have a call.
A human being. Get the digits, baby. Ask for the cell phone number. I love it.
That's right. Have to do it.
All right. Brandon Bruce. Well, man, if you get back to SoCal, let me know, and I will be attending. We got to look it up. Is Tennessee playing at LSU this year? We could meet in Baton Rouge, man. It's an idea.
Just a big throwdown. Go down to the bayou.
Get ready, baby.
Get some crawfish. Get a shrimp boil going.
We know how to kick it. All right, man. Brandon Bruce. So not serious, right? Not now you got me all kind of messed up.
Not serious, not citrus, not circus, just citrus, the cloud.
Serious insight, man. Thanks for coming on the Sales Podcast. It's been great.
You got it. Thanks, Wes. Appreciate you having me.
Hey, what a good guy, huh? A lot of good info in there. They found a gap and they filled it. That's what selling is. Find a need and fill it, right? At least that's what being an entrepreneur is. And to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to sell. Selling is the transference of a feeling, and that feeling is confidence. So how good are you at identifying needs and filling them? How good are you at transferring confidence to your prospects that your solution fills their need? And then how do you charge appropriately for it? You'll hear me, I'm always asking my guests, how'd you come up with your pricing? And most of them, all of them are honest, but most of them went through the experience of, we undervalued it, we underpriced it. And so, we kept raising our prices. So that's why I asked him about that. But he had a partner, and I've had partners. I've been burned by partners. I'm still looking for a good partner. I'm still open to it, but I'm doing more and more on my own because good partners are hard to find. But there's good masterminds. There's other ways to get the help and the feedback that you need in an affordable way. That is the Make Every Sale program. Come join. Hang out with me live every week. Private group. Ask your questions. I'll answer it. One member, actually, she just enrolled in the Make Every Sale community. She signed up for the 7-week live course that starts July 5th. She had a question, and this was on Sunday, the 24th. She asked a question. She was leaving today. As I record this, it's Monday, June 25th. This episode will go live a week later. But she asked a question about how to engage C-level executives. She said her company paid $25,000 to be like a low-level sponsor. I looked at the website, and they were like the third tier of sponsors at $25,000. And I gave her a specific plan, how to engage. She has private meetings with these prospects, which is pretty cool, which makes it worth $25,000 to get one-on-one appointments with C-level executives in your industry. But, I spent time on Sunday to map out how to do this, and she was thrilled. Okay, where else are you going to get that kind of feedback? I mean, the program right now, as I record this, is under $1,000, and you can bring a friend if you join for the July 5th launch. The price will go up. The price has already gone up a couple of times since I'm doing these webinars. But regardless, it'll always be affordable compared to getting one-on-one help from me, and also compared to not getting the help. So, they're spending $25,000, and I'll get feedback from her this next week, and we'll update you, as I do these. I do these in bunches, so it could be several weeks before I can announce what the results were on this episode, but I'll share them in the group. I'll ask her how it went, and we'll see how it goes. But I bet, she gets one more sale at least. And on a $25,000 conference, I would guesstimate that a sale is worth 2 to 10x, right? So $50,000 to $100,000 more is what she could earn from landing one more client, from getting one idea on a Sunday afternoon. So what's that worth? I mean, right now, like I said, you can bring a friend. So is it worth a few $100? I think so. And the only reason I'm doing it this cheap is I haven't launched it like this in years. And I want to get a bunch of people in to have a bunch of success, get a bunch of testimonials to justify raising the price. So jump in, join me, makeeverysale.com. All right. I've also mentioned my keynote speaking, hirethebestspeaker.com. Do that. Bring me out. Like I said, I'm speaking in Slovenia in November. I'm in talks to speak with an association in Florida in May. But associations are great. That's really kind of my sweet spot. 300 to 500, maybe 1,000 people. I can hang out the second day or even the same day, do some, lead a breakout session or two, help your members improve their messaging, their branding, their sales, their automation, their sequences. I've been in sales a long time, since 1997. I've consulted with thousands of companies, trained tens of thousands of salespeople around the world. I can help your people get mo better, and I'll customize the talk for your event, for your theme. Okay, so help me help you. So hirethebestspeaker.com. And you can schedule a time. You can get access to my calendar, and we'll see if it's a fit. Okay, no pressure, no big deal. But let's do talk. And then when you do sign me up as a speaker, you'll get 150 copies signed of my book, 79 stories. But if you don't need me as a speaker, or if you would just like to read the book to see what makes me tick, check it out, 79stories.info. get a signed copy. You can get 5 of them and save on shipping. So 79stories.info. And my book is, It Takes More Than a Big Smile, a Good Idea, and a Twitter account to build a business that lasts. 79 stories. They're short. They're easy to digest. You can read, one at a time very quickly, then go apply it, come back, see how it works, and then tell me how it's working or ask me questions in our free group, theimplementors.com. It's our free group on Facebook. Come hang out. Okay, ask me questions. We can continue the dialogue beyond the podcast, which if you leave me a 5-star review and then take a screenshot and email me that screenshot at thesaleswhisperer.com, I will send you a free digital version of my sales training flashcards. 51 pages, newly updated this year, to address your toughest objections and how to beat them, how to overcome it, and how to make every sale. So leave me a review, send that to me, get that as a gift. It sells for $20 online plus shipping, so you can save all that, get them for free. Thanks for listening. Now go sell something.